You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Here we go.
Welcome once again to the Grantcast. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Grant Baciocco. It is a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for checking things out. And a big shout out to all our Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons. The Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons help make this show possible. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you want to know more about the Patreon, stay through to the end of the show and I will talk about it there. Speaking of Saturday Morning Media, I have had on my to-do list for a very, 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 very long time to redesign the Saturday Morning Media website. Right now, the Saturday Morning Media website at SaturdayMorningMedia.com lists every new episode of every kind of show that I put out. And it's all there, and it's, you know, it works. I don't know if a lot of people go to websites like that anymore. I think people just subscribe to the podcast, and then they listen to the podcast when a new episode comes down, or they subscribe to YouTube, and they watch a new episode when it pops up on their subscription feed. But I want to redesign the website so it looks more like my personal website. So if you go to mrgrant.com, you can see that I basically have two pages. I have a puppetry page and then a creator page. And on the puppetry page, it lists like the projects that I've worked on. And then on the creator page, it lists links to the different projects that I've created, like Under the Puppet and Radio Adventures of Dr. Floyd and Toily and things like that. And if you click on those, it will go to the websites for those things. And so what I'm thinking of doing is for the Saturday Morning Media website, it's going to be like that. It will list all the shows. It will list Under the Puppet. It will list the Grantcast. It will list Grant's Advent Calendar. It will list it. And then if you click on that, it'll take you to the respective websites. So the Saturday Morning Media website is basically just one page with a bunch of links. And then what I think I'm going to do is like I've done for Dr. Floyd. If you go to drfloyd.com, it takes you to a page with the episodes on it, but it is a Libsyn page because Libsyn is where I host my podcast. And as I said, I don't think people go to web pages much anymore unless they have a specific reason. I mean, for podcasts. So when I go upload a new episode of Under the Puppet or Grant's Advent Calendar, I'm uploading it to Libsyn because that's where the episode goes out. But then I'm creating a post for SaturdayMorningMedia.com. Then I'm creating a post for Patreon, and then and so on and so on. If I do this with the Saturday Morning Media webpage, then that will completely remove the Saturday Morning Media. I have to create a post for SaturdayMorningMedia.com from the equation. So unless you can think of a reason why I shouldn't do that, if like, no, Grant, we love it when we can go to this page and see all the episodes. Anyway, there you go. I wasn't planning on talking about this. I'm also thinking about not sunsetting, but just stopping to produce episodes of Attraction Checklist. That is my Disney Parks podcast. It gets a fair amount of downloads, more than I think it would ever get. But just getting to the parks is such a hassle. Deep down in my heart, I love the parks, but closer to the surface of my heart, I hate all the BS that you have to deal with in order to go to the parks. Reservations. And then once you get in the gate, you have to spend at least $25 per person to get Genie Plus in order to get any sort of, a normal semblance of a day. But the thing I really miss most is I hate just being able to go. There are several times where I'm driving past Disneyland and I might be like, you know what? I want to stop in. I want to check out Disneyland. And you just can't because there's no reservations. You can't get same-day reservations, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole other podcast for a whole other time. So I have a bunch of Attraction Checklist episodes recorded. Or not recorded, but I have audio recorded. So I'm going to finish those out, but I think I'm letting my magic keys expire. And I'm going to put that money towards other things. We shall see. But this does tie into the main topic I want to talk about today, and that is the trouble with Trixie. On July 10th, 2015, I published the very first episode of the Country Bear Collector Show. Was a podcast, a video podcast. So it lived on YouTube, but it also went out as a video podcast where I would show off one piece a week of my extensive Country Bear Jamboree collection. And as I started this show, I will tell you, my collection just kept growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And I love doing that show. I think the first 10 episodes or so, it was just my hands, my actual human hands. And then when I saw Dan Wright's amazing Easel Monster, I'll put a link to that in the show notes, where he would do the close-ups of his artboard, and he had big monster gloves that would do all the painting. My friend Russ Walco, amazing puppet builder, puppetgarage.com, I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well, said, "Oh, I'll make you a set of bear hands, and then the bear can show off the stuff from the Country Bear Collector Show." And then we were just off and running, and that was it. And I put out an episode of the Country Bear Collector Show from July 10th, 2015, once a week through June 2nd, 2023. The last episode of the Country Bear Collector Show, it was episode number 411, if I am remembering that correctly. It is episode number 411. It was the 411th episode of the podcast. I think I had done some special edition episodes in there, so the final number of episodes was probably something around maybe 420, dude, or 430. Maybe not that much, but probably around 420, because I didn't do a ton of extra episodes. But I put out an episode a week, and I was very adamant about putting out these episodes. I was very grateful when I found my editor, Stephen Staver, and he was able to edit the Country Bear Collector Show podcast for me. So I would film 5, 6, 7 at a time and then send the files to Stephen. Stephen would get them all set up to go out, and then we would put them all out. And that was one where we had to upload an episode to YouTube, and you had to create the post, and to Libsyn and create the post, and da-da-da. And yeah, the last episode of the podcast came out on June 2nd, 2023. And shortly after that, I lost my will to continue the show. And I'm going to explain to you why that happened. In my collecting of the Country Bear Jamboree memorabilia, Tokyo Disneyland had the best Country Bear Jamboree merchandise. Bottom line, period. You can argue with me, but you're going to lose. The merchandise that came out of Tokyo Disneyland was leagues above anything that came out in the United States parks. I'm sorry if there is a piece that you really love, but Tokyo Disney did it, and they did it well. And one of the earliest pieces of merchandise that Tokyo Disneyland had were 4 plush. And the 4 plush were Big Al, Henry, Bunny from the Sunbonnets, and Trixie. And these 4 plush, you can find a picture online. They were in a catalog back in the mid to early 80s. They look really amazing, and they would rarely come up on eBay. So in my Country Bear collecting, these were 4 plush that I really wanted. And I would scour eBay for them. I would scour like vintage sites. But because they are from Tokyo Disneyland and they weren't sold here in the States, like nowadays, there's whole specialty websites devoted to getting merchandise from Tokyo Disneyland. It's very expensive, but you can do it. It's very easy. And I have done it in the past. But for these, they were nobody really in the United States, unless you went to Tokyo Disneyland, got these plush and brought them back into the United States. So they're very rare. And throughout my collecting, I was able to track down 3 of them. Actually, I was able to track down 4 of them. I was able to track down all 4 of them. Not only that, I was able to track down 3 of them with their original tags. They had these little tags that weren't attached to them. They were kind of like looped attached to their arms. So it was very rare to find one of these plushes with the tag attached. And I was able to find 3 of them with the tag attached. And then the 4th one, Trixie, I bought off of somebody who posted about it on Instagram, and they were from the Philippines. And when it arrived, it was just very, very dirty. And it was just like a little grimy, and it was very, very well loved. We'll say that. It was very well loved. And so I contemplated taking it to a restoration place, whatever. I had all 4 of them, but this 4th one, this one with Trixie, I was a little bit like, it's not great. And if I can ever replace this, I'm going to replace it. Well, going on, I'm collecting, I'm doing the show, and all of a sudden, in probably, I would say, April of 2023, I find a listing for Tokyo Disneyland Trixie, and the pictures look amazing. It's got the tag, it looks beautiful. And it was one of those things where I was like, I know how rare this is. I know that this is a lot of money, but I'm going to pick this up because this is the 4th and final thing. And then I will have a complete set of these 4 country bears from Tokyo Disneyland. And these are like holy grails, right? So I ordered it. I don't think it was on eBay. I think it was somewhere else, but I ordered it. It was shipping from overseas, tracking it. So excited for this thing to show up. I mean, just so excited for this thing to show up. And the box arrives. And at the time, we were getting ready to make a move. We were selling our house. So I didn't open the box right away. But I knew it was here, and I knew where the box was, and I was very, very happy. And then one day, before we moved out of our old house, it was probably one of the last things I recorded in my old studio. I set up to record the Country Bear Collector Show. I got a few things out before they got packed away to be sent to the new house. And I was like, oh, I'm going to open this box with Trixie in it. And as I started to open the box, I realized, wow, this box is bigger than what the plush should be, because these plushes, maybe they were a foot tall, but this is like a big box. And I was like, well, they really must have wrapped this Trixie very, very well to put inside this box. And I open the box and I go in through the bubble wrap and I pull out a Trixie that is probably 3 feet tall. It's in amazing condition. It looks exactly like the little 1 foot tall one, but this is now like a 3 foot tall, very plush, vintage Trixie. And as I stood there in my studio, gazing into the eyes of this plush Trixie stuffed bear, I realized that they made these original 4 plush in 2 different sizes. There were the 1 foot tall ones, and then there were these 2.5 foot, 3 foot tall ones. And so I thought I was completing a collection, but I was not. I was starting a new collection, because now I would have to get all these. And in that moment, I don't know if it's the straw that broke the camel's back, because I love doing the show. But in that moment, I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I cannot. I don't know what it was, but it was in that moment, seeing that big Trixie and realizing that these plushes came in 2 sizes, and it was very cool that I had one of the big ones. I just was like, I'm not going to do this show anymore. I can't. We moved from our old house later that year in June of, I think we moved into the place we're in now in July. And that's when I decided I was going to sell my Country Bear collection, or not all of it. I was going to keep some things that meant a lot to me, some very, very cool things. And then the rest I was going to sell. And I did. And it was all because of that Trixie. That moment that I opened the box, I'm trying to put into exact words how I felt, but it was defeat. Like, it was just like, this is a treadmill that is going to keep going forever. I am in the process of packing up all this stuff to move it to a new house. In the new house, I don't think I'm going to have a place to display all this stuff. The cabinets that we bought that my collection was in were too big to move. We actually sold them with the house. Like, they were like, no, these are yours because they're bolted to the wall. They're yours. And I was just like, yeah, that's it. That's it for the Country Bear Collector Show. So if you are a fan of the things I work on, and you're like, hey, what happened to the Country Bear Collector Show? You can blame it on Trixie, because Trixie was the cause for the downfall. And if you actually go to cbjcollector.com, episode number 411 is a review of that Trixie. And that is the final episode of the Country Bear Collector Show. Well, this is not the final episode of the Grantcast. The Grantcast is going to keep rolling right along. Thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate it. And I will talk to you next time right here on the Grantcast. This episode of the Grantcast was edited by Stephen Staver and was made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who have gone over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a pledge for as little as $1 a month. Patrons at the behind-the-scenes level and above get access to a video of the recording of these podcast episodes. Big shout-out to all of our patrons, and a special shout-out to our patron producers, Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Paul, Scott Armstrong, Vicky Sebring, Ricky Chavez, Karina, Jeff Toro, and Lee Thompson. If you'd like to become a patron and receive episodes of the Grantcast before they are released, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly pledge today. And thank you for your support. This episode of the Grantcast is copyright 2025 Saturday Morning Media Grant Baciocco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com.
You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.